There is a saying, use a picture, it's worth 1,000 words, which is attributed to an article that came out in 1911 by Arthur Brisbane. Applying that to a more modern audience, by comparison, when we first flipped through the Dungeon Master's Guide, imagery was sparse. And I'm talking the first edition DMG here. It had pictures, sure, but full-page artwork was, it was sparse. But on page 194, we would get this fantastic image of Emirikol the Chaotic, illustrated by David A. Trampier. Today, we are going to go over exactly who Emirikol is and the somewhat somber tale of David Trampier. Let's jump into it. Emirikol, as mentioned, was an illustration found in the first edition Dungeon Master's Guide published in 1979. There wasn't anything in the book itself that referenced him, just his name right there in the illustration, Emirikol the Chaotic. We were really left to our own imagination to determine who he was, why he was riding through this town and setting people ablaze. We assumed that he came riding down the alleyway, blasted the person in front of him, likely heard a guard from behind him, and zapped him before he could notch that crossbow. We see a guard emerging from the Green Griffin, and others appearing to run into the safety of a healing ward, as indicated by the little presence of that rod of Asclepius. Emirikol's horse doesn't seem to be fazed by any of this. I mean, its ears are pushed back, yeah, but its eyes don't have that scared mare wide-eye look. It actually appears to be rather calm, which we interpreted it as, this is just a normal, possibly everyday thing for this guy and his horse to be doing. Further, if you look at the expression of everyone else, two of them appear to be in a state of, yeah, this is totally normal. Of course, the full name is Emirikol the Chaotic, so we also immediately thought that his alignment had to fall into the chaotic evil category. I mean, what else could explain him blasting folks on what looks to be an otherwise really nice day? I can distinctly remember a few things about this specific illustration. The first was, my DM at the time included the Green Griffin as an inn in his games. And the second, I really always wanted to know the person whose foot this was. Of course, we always asked what took place to cause Emirikol to run amok like this to begin with. And we were also asking ourselves, well, who is D.A.T? D.A.T, the guy that illustrated it, which we could find out easily enough as his name was listed in the illustration's credits, D.A. Trampier. And we'll talk about him in a bit, but as the years went on, with each new book, new module, new supplement that came out, even in issues of Dragon Magazine and Dungeon Magazine for that matter, each time something new would come out, information would elude us about Emirikol. It wouldn't be until second edition of Dungeons & Dragons that we would get something new. A full 19 years after the Emirikol illustration was published is how long we'd wait to hear anything more of him. In 1998, TSR released an adventure by Monty Cook called A Paladin in Hell. In this adventure, the players are tasked with going to the 9 Hells on a rescue mission of sorts. And I don't want to give away too many spoilers about this adventure, but what we will go over will pertain more to the who Emirikol was. We learn that he helped to steal what is known as the Valis Crystal. And to this, I will give a mild spoiler as it provides to us context for Emirikol's actions. It is said that Asmodeus, Lord of the 9 Levels of Hell, placed an entire prime material world into that crystal, with the hopes that the inhabitants would be corrupted and would worship him as a god and increase his power. But the crystal was stolen by a group of mortals, of which only 2 remained to be important enough for Asmodeus to even remember. A paladin named Clysindral, and the topic of our video, Emirikol the Chaotic. Asmodeus set out to steal it back, which is the catalyst, really, that starts off this Paladin in Hell adventure. What makes things curious is that the Paladin and Emirikol, were friends. A mephit of all creatures appears to the PCs with a note that reads, I can provide the means to recover what has been lost, but I will give it only to those who ask for it in person. And it's signed by Emirikol the Chaotic, someone who was thought lost for many years. For us, it had been a literal 19 years, but in terms of game time, it's been 30 years. So we went a little crazy when this adventure came out because, well, it sparked all of that imagination all over again. We come to learn that Emirikol lives in a tower, a fortress on the tip of a narrow peninsula called Point Harrow. Surrounding the area is a magical storm of swirling metal and destruction. But the tower within seems to be protected, giving Emirikol peace from being disturbed. And as an aside, for those interested, I highly recommend reading the description of this metal storm. It's great inspiration, and it's actually worded really well. We learn that Emirikol has created creatures known as Steeds of Chaos. They are described as being beasts that kind of vary in appearance, with some running on 8 legs, others on 2, while others fly with misshaped wings. They range in size anywhere from like a house cat size to larger than a horse. They have no linking features that would give indication for any method for which Emirikol made them. They just are a mishmash of chaos. And that's when we realize that Emirikol the Chaotic, that the name may not have been representative of an alignment. Of course, we would be right in assuming that Emirikol's alignment would fall somewhere in the chaotic range, as we are provided with his stat block. And keep in mind that this is from 2nd edition days, so stats were presented quite a bit differently back then, but he had a strength of 12, a dexterity of 16, constitution of 15, his intelligence was 19, wisdom was 14, and his charisma was 17. He had an armor class of -2, 52 hit points, and a THAC0 of 13, and of course, his alignment is chaotic neutral. Chaotic neutral is loosely defined as one that desires personal freedom, that choosing to do good or evil is really of no concern. Just having the freedom to do is what's important. This definition is largely unchanged from its 1st edition days to our current 5th edition material, but through this lens, we were starting to see a more solid image of who Emirikol is. He was considered a wild mage, someone that dealt with the very nature of chaos. He knew a messload of spells, including up to 9th level spells. He also knew many of the spells that were found in the Tome of Magic, and even experimented with mixing potions. So much so that he once drank a potion of flying, mixed with another potion, and now has the ability to fly permanently. He also has a contingency that if he is attacked physically, the attacking person may face a disintegration spell. While chaos seems to surround him, he does have some method to his madness. Now, in addition to a myriad of spells at his disposal, he also has an Amulet of the Plains, a Ring of Joining, and this one's really cool. This allows him to sense everything that the other wearer of another Ring of Joining senses. He wears an Earring of Protection, which gives him a +5 bonus to his armor class, a Ring of Wizardry that doubles his 4th and 5th level spells, a Robe of Chaos that acts as a robe of scintillating colors, and a Robe of the Archmagi, a Prismatic Wand that can cast Prismatic Spray, Prismatic Wall, or Prismatic Sphere, and it's got 18 charges. A Rod of Beguiling and a Wand of Wonder, which he has a 50-50 chance of actually controlling its effect, and it's got 34 charges. And he may or may not also have in his possession at least one Orb of Dragonkind, the Codex of Infinite Planes, and possibly the Machine of Lum the Mad. They leave that up to the DM to decide if he has those. And possibly even more artifacts and relics. He also has a sailing ship that he owns, made of an entire layer of the Abyss. And that ship is operated by demons. And it was traded to Emirikol by Demogorgon, in which he gives ownership of the ship to the players. I'd say more, but spoilers. But I will say that he is living up to his namesake, the Chaotic, as he has also earned the respect of a number of abyssal demons, princes there. Let that sink in for a bit. Emirikol is so out there that he has demons that are going to steer clear of him. You got to be super crazy for that, right? And chaotic. The telling of events would be redone for 5th edition in an adventure for the Adventurers League called Hellfire Requiem, in which it is rumored that he, Emirikol, has obtained the Eye of Vecna. But as best I can recall, his stats were never presented here, and it never explicitly stated that he used the eye or shoved it in his face to make it work. Which I always thought was odd that they provided back in 2nd edition, that they denoted the possibility that you could fight him, his stats. Because if you chose to and you got taken out, the adventure was over. Or if you yourself were taken out, what am I trying to say? If you fought him and were taken out, the adventure was over. If you fought him and took him out, the adventure was over. But I digress. Actually, while I am digressing, I will mention that I'm working on another video that covers the Fist of Emirikol, which is a very rare and real-world magic item that's in the shape of a D20. So be sure to subscribe if you aren't already so that you don't miss that. For the most part, that's really where the tale of Emirikol the Chaotic somewhat poots out. His name pops up from time to time throughout other editions. For example, in the 5th edition Monster Manual, there's a small blurb that he wrote, which reads, "Have no pity for this damnable wretch. Bloody thing could grow up to be a demon lord one day." He's mentioned in 4th edition as having perfected the disintegrate spell, so his name has kept being relevant throughout throughout the different editions throughout the years. And Emirikol would also pop up in third-party creators over the years as well, including a Dungeon Crawl Classics from Goodman Games. Emirikol was framed. They were kind of fans of the character as well. And it's always fascinated me that all of this came about from one illustration, that a collective imagination could extract so much from David Trampier's works. And this is where things are going to take a slightly somber turn. While David Trampier was known for his illustration of Emirikol the Chaotic, as well as the cover of the Player's Handbook, and other D&D artwork, he was also very well known for his cartoon series Wormy in Dragon Magazine, which he wrote and illustrated. Wormy was about the monster's point of view in Dungeons & Dragons, but Wormy first appeared in Dragon Magazine, issue 9, back in 1977, and would continue for 10 years up until issue 132 in 1988, at which point David vanished. He would continue to see checks issued from TSR, but they would be returned to their home office unopened and uncashed. He seemingly disappeared without a trace and was presumed to be no longer with us. Fast forward to 2002, and Southern Illinois University's college newspaper, the Daily Egyptian, would run an article called Coffee, Cigarettes, and Speed Bumps, a night with a Carbondale cabbie. Now, I want to get the credit right, but this one is a little confusing. At the top of the article, it cites that it's by a Gus Bodie, but at the bottom, it cites that the article's reporter was Aaron Thompson. Again, just wanted to point that out. But this article highlights that David has started driving cabs in Chicago, then moved to Carbondale, Illinois to drive a cab there. No mention of him in TSR days were mentioned, but when that article was released, many folks in the RPG industry wondered if it was the same David Trampier. And it was. Wormy, his cartoon series, ended in the middle of a storyline, and several folks reached out to him with an interest of picking it back up and continuing the story, of publishing it again. But he would always politely refuse. Others approached him to get back into the gaming world, but they too were met with refusals. Whatever happened between him and TSR was enough for him to walk away from the gaming industry. There are plenty of rumors out there as to what caused him to walk away, but honestly, for today's video, I'm not aiming at speculation. All we can say is that he had little to nothing to do with the gaming industry from about 1988 on. Sadly, he would succumb to cancer and pass in March of 2014. With this video being about who is Emirikol, and to an extent the artist who drew him, I want to shift slightly to a real-world location that may have been the inspiration for Emirikol the Chaotic, at least the setting. To see the inspiration for Emirikol the Chaotic's ride, all one has to do is travel to Greece, specifically to the Street of the Knights of Rhodes. This is a photo taken that shows pretty close the angle of Emirikol's ride, and what's unknown, at least in all of the research that I've done, is if David Trampier actually visited Rhodes, or if he just used an image as a reference. But this is most certainly the location. If we kind of plug in the figures, it immediately becomes clear that this was definitely the location of inspiration. It would certainly be a neat place to visit, at least in general, but just to be able to stand there and know that this place inspired an artist that would bring the imagery to the world of Dungeons and Dragons and imagination to the game, well, I gotta admit that would be pretty neat and a pretty cool place to visit. And I'd also recommend fellow YouTubers the Old Warlock's video that he put out last year, and I'll link to it down in the description, but it's where he himself actually did go and visit that street, took photos, everything. It's a fun video, so be sure to check it out. But if you want to check it out on Google Maps yourself, there are lots of street views. None of them really match up at the right angle, but still, I'd be lying if I didn't pull up the street view and try to imagine exactly where he was coming from, where Emirikol was coming from, where he was going, and, well, exactly what it was he was doing. Now, to that end, I have a question for all of you. But first, I want to thank everyone for watching today's video. It's one that I started out about a year ago, got through some of it, then shelved it, then picked it back up again. So it's been a long time coming. I also want to thank all of my YouTube members and Patreon supporters, as their support of the channel has made it so that I didn't need to take on a sponsored ad for today's video. And I've said this before, but we usually skip all those ads anyways, right? If you would like to check out how to support the channel, I'll leave links to my YouTube members section as well as to my Patreon down below my little box here, but also down in the description. I'd also like to invite everyone watching to join my Discord. A lot of video ideas come direct from members there, so if you'd like to help shape the direction that this channel is going, feel free to jump into the Discord. A link to that is also down below me in my box and down in the description. Emirikol the Chaotic, as an illustration, was an inspiration to many. David Trampier, for whatever his reasons, left the industry. But I can only hope that at some point he came to know how much his works inspired a generation of gamers. I mentioned this at the top of the video, but the artwork in the original books, well, it was sparse, which is something that I felt made the artwork that was included stand out and gave reason to pause and look it over and imagine the scenario. I also enjoyed the amount of information that was presented in its place. In other words, we got more information and less images. By today's standards, almost every page, if not every other page, has a major amount of art splashed across it, even most of them being full-page art splashes, which I can't help but feel chews up space where information could be instead. But I do also agree with the statement that Arthur Brisbane penned back in 1911. Use a picture, it's worth 1,000 words. As for my question for you, has there been a piece of artwork that you've run across? Doesn't even have to be a Dungeons and Dragons book, but something that has just simply stopped you. It made you ponder. What led to that moment that's being depicted? What is going on in this artwork? And have you incorporated it into your tabletop game? Let me know down in the comments. And until next our paths cross, may you tame your wild mage and control chaos.